Nancy Pelosi is once again going to run for Speaker of the House. Nancy Pelosi, more likely than not, is going to have that Speaker in the House locked without necessarily doing anything for that Speaker in the House. Interestingly enough, you have the left, people who are supposedly on the left, who I browbeat, yelled at, was very terse with, because my thought is you don't vote for Joe Biden without getting anything in return for that vote. It's a representative government. If you invert the political space, not to the point where that guy is coming to you to try to get your vote, it is saying, I am going to do X or I'm going to do Y. I am going to attend to the ills of the various communities in our society that need me, and they're going to be so happy that I am doing that I am doing my job, they're going to give me that vote. That's not what happened. It's, oh my God, my knees are so weak, I peed myself, Donald Trump is terrifying, Joe Biden save me. Here's my vote. That's basically pretty much every lefty, including lefties who call themselves radicals. All of those people, Joe Biden basically said, I'm not going to defund the police. I'm going to give more money to the cops. No, I don't believe in the Green New Deal. No, I don't believe in Medicare for all. And in fact, I am so adamant about not believing in Medicare for all. If it was put up, I would veto it. And the left still voted for him. I'm making the point that this guy gave AOC a minute to speak at the convention, but went out chasing tail from one Republican after the next, even Republicans that attacked AOC. My hypothesis about this is that this is just who Joe Biden is. These Republicans, he fit very in line with them. He would probably, all things being equal, be a Republican. His policies aren't in line. When he wanted to cut Social Security, when he wanted to cut Medicare, when he wanted to have a balanced budget amendment, when he wanted to throw every darky in prison that he could get his hands on, I'm making a point, that's Joe Biden, that's who he is. The deregulation, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the militarism, yes, he's a Republican. Or you can just say a modern Democrat, because that's the party. Honest. Joe Biden is not trying to hit or punch progressives. He's apathetic towards you. At the end of it, he wants you to vote for him. Of course, he's a politician. He assumes, however, you would vote for him. He assumes blacks will vote for him. So fervently so that if you're not going to vote for me, you're not even black. That's called an assumption of vote. And you know what you do? You legitimize that assumption of the vote by giving him that vote to the tune of like 90% or something. I'm making the point that it is rational to take advantage of the left. It is rational to take advantage of blacks because those are locked votes. This year, they called you every name but the child of God. They call you Trump supporters. They call you racist. They call you sexist. They call you bigoted. They pretended as if people of color who backed Sanders just didn't exist. Elizabeth Warren goes so far as to say we're uniquely aggressive. We're abusive towards women. All of it was nonsense, of course. Their supporters were just as vile and just as vicious and just as vindictive online. There wasn't any kind of special thing, but the media basically worked in tandem with the political party to use his best attribute against him, to attack him. And then they turned around and expected all of you to vote for him. They got freaked out when they thought Sanders was going to run with it and he was going to take it. Bloomberg jumps into the race. But you must understand, the party itself understood, more likely than not, that Sanders was going to lose because Sanders just didn't have it in him to push for a real war, for a real political war, where his objective was to win it. He didn't have it in him. And with the collapse, and with using Warren against them, with using the rest of the party against them, they understood that the moment that he lost, he was going to back the party regardless. What this means, however, is that he is going to get nothing in return for his support. So when he comes up and they say there's a task force, that's a face-saving mechanism. There is nothing real behind it. It's just a face-saving mechanism. It's just a task force. No, he's not going to get anything out of it because he has no political clout to do so. If Bernie Sanders would have said 20 million people are not going to vote for you unless you back Medicare for all, then you would have had a different political space. Yes, they would have bitched. Yes, they would have moaned. What the left needs to understand is that politics is a lot to do with leverage. Fear, cowardice, doesn't compel any leverage. The problem is that basically just because you don't occupy a square doesn't necessarily mean you can't exert force or leverage. Just because Sanders lost doesn't mean Sanders couldn't exert leverage in the political space. Now, at that point, he will be a focal point for 20 or 30 million people that back him. I'm making a point that if your job is to get Medicare for all, just because you lose a presidential race doesn't mean that job ends, especially if the presidency was a means to an end of getting that accomplished. The presidency, depending upon how you look at it, is just the way you're trying to get something accomplished. Yes, you can get more accomplished if you occupied the square. However, you didn't entirely need to occupy the square if you were trying to get one or two things accomplished. The Democratic Party would have had to make a choice. Either risk losing 20, 30 million people that backed Medicare for all and that expected you to support something like that in the midst of a pandemic. Or say, we're not going to set the precedent of backing and accepting what the public is demanding. Instead, we're going to tank it to a maniac, to a man who we call the apocalypse. They could do that. They very well could have done that. And perhaps Sanders might have thought they would have done that, which is why Sanders went that route. I don't think that. I think Sanders, if I'm being honest, was just weak on that front. I think it was just weak on that front. But the point I'm trying to make here is this. That logic of politics doesn't change. It's in various corners and various ways where you can use it. It looks different in different contexts. But it's still leverage. Person wants something. You have something where you can deliver it. They give you something in exchange for the thing that they need. It's politics. Capitalism screams about it. But the left doesn't seem to understand that. So when Sanders gives his vote for zero, goose egg, all of these lefty progressive groups bitch, moan, shake their hands, ultimately give their support for goose egg. And when Joe Biden gets in office, he says, thanks, I'm going to be Joe Biden. Yes, Rahm Emanuel, come on in. Neera Tanden, come on in. Why wouldn't he? And what can you do that he did do that? Hell, he could have made Rahm Emanuel head of pick any random thing, health and human services or whatever. What could you have done? And I'm making a point, nothing, because you compel no leverage. At some point, the left is going to have to understand that the reason they kick you in the teeth, the reason they would choose a Neera Tanden, the reason for a potential Rahm Emanuel would be in the administration, the reason why he would bring on those war hawks, the reason when they asked Joe Biden, who's the lefty that you brought in, and Joe Biden can't answer anybody, is because basically your vote is captured. They believe that you're so terrified of the right that they can put in any Democrat and the overwhelming majority of you will vote for him. And they have found themselves to be right. Yes, they lose out votes for people who aren't privileged enough to vote for Democrat, meaning the poor, the minorities. But for all intents and purposes, the left and many blacks locked vote. Doesn't matter what they do. Locked vote. Until that changes. And until you can pressure the party in a way where they know they're going to lose. And I don't mean this just from the standpoint of the politics of us. I also mean by people who call themselves lefties in Congress. When opportunities present, those opportunities should be used for leverage. And one of the opportunities that are presenting itself right now has to do with Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi wants to be Speaker of the House again. Congratulations, Nancy Pelosi. Now, if your name is AOC, if your name is Jayapal, if you are one of the members of the squad, then the first thing you should be thinking of is, do I want Nancy Pelosi to be Speaker of the House? And whether I do or not, what do I want for that vote for Nancy Pelosi to be Speaker of the House? After all, she's not going to give me anything because that's not politics. Joe Biden didn't give me anything when he got in office, me from the standpoint of the left. So at that point, you should know at some point, either from your Obama administration information or from this year, at some point, it should have clicked. Politics is not about them giving you anything. What do you have the leverage to take? In this very specific instance, Nancy Pelosi wants to be head of the party again. Great for her. You won't even Speaker of the House. What are you going to give to get it? Only question. And if you're a lefty, what are you willing to try to get out of her in concessions for her to get Speaker of the House? That's the question. Now, are the lefties on board for that? What are they doing? This was Doer's floated idea. Doer was the first one who floated this idea. And it's a good idea. It's politics 101. Leverage. We want Medicare for all. Jayapal wrote Medicare for all bill in the House. Why don't, hey, here's an idea. You push Nancy Pelosi for Medicare for all. If you want the speakership, you put up Medicare for all for a vote. Period. Walk up the door. And as she said, but, you keep walking. That's the reality of it. That's politics. And maybe the left needs to get lessons on this. 101, leverage. This person wants to be Speaker of the House. This person has done things to hobble you as the lefty over the course of time. This person is not going to give you anything, so you have no expectations from that person. You don't have anybody that could be Speaker of the House yet, so your thought is you need to extract concessions from Nancy Pelosi. Great. What are those concessions? Pick one. Pick two. Let's say Medicare for all is a big one. You want Medicare for all to come up to a vote. Now, they would say, what's the point of that? I mean, why is that an issue, etc.? Because you want them on the record. The point of it is that you do it. In and of itself. Period. The point is the point. Meaning the point is that you're getting your feet wet. You're learning and understanding how leverage is used in a political space. And I'm talking about the public itself, because the public needs to have various expectations of the members who are in Congress, who are supposedly there to represent them, but inevitably end up not. What matters is that you will it so. And it is done because you have political leverage to get it done. I don't care what it is. You can have Nancy Pelosi fart at high noon for all I care. What I care is that the left articulates something and gets it done. The will in and of itself is one of the reasons that I would put that, yes, it's a valuable thing to do. You will it, it gets done. Congratulations. That's the start. But more so also to get people on record. It's one thing for people to say, yeah, I'm for Medicare for all, and they would kind of flutter about, no, I want them on record. I want them in the congressional record where they go on and put their name down. 88% of the Democratic Party backs Medicare for all. Think about that. 88% of the Democratic Party backs Medicare for all, and yet Joe Biden said brazenly, I would veto a legislation that 88% of my party backs. How do you say that with a straight face and not believe that there's going to be some kind of kickback from that, some punishment for that? But he says it brazenly because he knows the left in his head has nowhere else to go. And my job is to get across. You do. You can stand in unison with the other people who back a particular policy and scream to high heaven, you get our vote when you represent our interests and back this policy. And I swear to God, on that day, you will get Medicare for all. On that day. Right now, however, Nancy Pelosi wants to be Speaker. Great. All right. How many seats? Democrats have a 15-seat majority currently in the House of Representatives. You don't have 15 progressives that says no dice unless we get X. Now, every member of the squad should be willing to do this. But how many people are in the Progressive Caucus. What, they're like 100? How are there 100 people in the Progressive Caucus and yet Congress, House of Representatives, is this fucked up? That's a good question, right? Maybe they aren't that progressive at all. Maybe they pay the money because it gives them bang for the buck to be able to say, hey, I'm part of the members of the Progressive Caucus. No, I don't do anything progressive, but hey, I got the button. The button says it right here. I'm talking about more than just standing somewhere like a statue and somebody saying that guy looks progressive because he's standing there. It's what you do that matters. It's not what you say, it is what you do. In this very specific case, you can put some level of influence on Nancy Pelosi if Nancy Pelosi wants that seat. And you need to be willing to walk if she is not willing to capitulate. Period. I'm sorry. Last time around, you had all of these lefties that ended up voting for Nancy Pelosi because they held the specter of somebody that was worse. Maybe you should have been willing to let them fall to that person who was worse. I am making the point that Nancy Pelosi lost seats in an election where she was supposed to gain seats, accepted a deal, or is willing to accept a deal for less than $1 trillion, even though Trump was trying to offer her $1.8 trillion. Like, this is failure. This is not success. And then they try to blame progressives for this stuff, even though the people who backed Medicare for All won their seats. I make the point that there should be enough progressives with enough spine, enough idea of tactics to say, I want to vote on Medicare for All, or pick something else. I'm just making the point that at some point you need to start using leverage to get across to people that this is what politics looks like. Because I got to be honest, they had no clue. When you were looking back at the election in the primaries, they had no clue that leverage played anything in politics. You had all of these people that on the left that basically bent over, pulled their tails up, and spread ass cheeks as far as possible. And I'm saying that is not the way politics works. Politics works on this notion of leverage. And until people get that in their heads and get used to that, they're going to always end up looking for the back door when they actually have opportunity to get stuff accomplished. All of these people are supposed to be part of the Progressive Caucus. Mark Pocan, the one that was making excuses for why progressives shouldn't use leverage, shouldn't use any level of power in the political space to try to get votes that they need. Jayapal, Barbara Lee, love Barbara Lee. Ryu Riviera, Rokana, here are the vice chairs. Look, there's like more than 15 people just right here. And this is called the Progressive Caucus. So if there are like 100 people in it, and the leadership is like 15, then what's the issue? What's the issue? If the objective is to get progressive policy accomplished, and Nancy Pelosi wants to be Speaker of the House, and she will have say-so over whether or not a vote is taken on Medicare for All, and she's not under normal circumstances going to do it, but you want Medicare for All, she wants to be Speaker, it looks like a deal can be made here. And it looks like enough of you should be able to cobble yourselves together to be a no in case she's willing to do Medicare for All. That is politics 101. That is the use of leverage in order to accomplish what you want. This person wants X, you want Y, you got something you can exchange, and boom, win-win. Win-win. They'll bitch about it. So what? So what? That's the least you can do. The least you can do. How do you have all of these members in the Progressive Caucus? Maybe you need to start expelling members until you get to some kind of objective grouping that actually fits the model, as opposed to having this letterhead that these people just sitting out saying they're a part of an organization. But, maybe I'm bitching. Maybe it's the medication from the surgery. Who knows? I'm just making a point that at some point, congressional members who call themselves progressives have to do something, as opposed to this kind of weak spinelessness that you see from them, not just in the election from the standpoint of the primaries, but even afterwards. You had the potential this year to get Medicare for All. Do you realize that? You had 88% support for Medicare for all. And if you go down the list from schools, marijuana legislation, all of that stuff was positive. And you had public giving you that approval. I can go through the polls. And Joe Biden ends up as being president. I'm making the point that even with the Joe Biden as being president, you still had public force and pressure to put on him. But the left wasn't there for it. They were so terrified of Trump. I'm going to leave it here. I'm going to say like, I'm going to say share, and I'm going to say subscribe. I'm going to say if the Progressive Caucus doesn't want to get off their ass and actually do something, then maybe the leadership needs to start weeding people away, or maybe they need to come up with a new caucus that can be, the real Progressive Caucus, not pretenders, not people who just want it on the letterhead. And maybe that's too long of a name, but hey, maybe that name is what you need to kind of get across that you're the real thing and those other guys are just part of a fucking fan club. Leverage matters, and it should start to be used now, especially now. Leverage Pelosi. Get that vote on Medicare for all. Whether you win or not is irrelevant. The fact that you have the power to do it is what's relevant. Use it. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. And make sure you subscribe, guys. The YouTube has been kicking people off the subscription list. So definitely make sure you hit the subscribe and you hit the notification bell so you can see when my videos fly up. Thanks all. I'll talk to you guys in a few.